The former CIA Director, Michael Hayden, responded to a post on Twitter, now known as X, which is, should Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville be removed from his committee? And former CIA Director Michael Hayden says, how about the human race? Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. If I were Tommy Tuberville, I'd be sleeping with one eye open because that's not an empty threat. It's something that the CIA has been known to do once or twice, to engage in political assassination. It's something we've seen increasing political violence in recent years. We've seen calls, forget about the CIA, we've seen calls from liberals more broadly to attack conservatives. Not armed soldiers, but conservative leaders, some public officials. Push back on them. Go to their homes where their children sleep. We heard that from Maxine Waters. You can't be civil with people who disagree with you. That was Hillary Clinton. Eric Holder, former Obama Attorney General, all these guys. Not exactly an empty threat. It does give a decent picture of our government. And here's the decent picture. There's a little silver lining to the former CIA director calling for the assassination of a sitting senator. The silver lining is, if the CIA actually wanted to take this guy out, they probably would do it. If the CIA were what people imagine the CIA to be, if the deep state were omnipotent as people believe it to be, then they would just do this stuff, right? They wouldn't post about it on Twitter. They would just start killing senators. And they don't do that because the deep state, even the CIA, the vaunted CIA, they're not they're not omnipotent. And they're not ubiquitous for that matter. And they've got a lot of power, but they don't have total power. And they control enough to become irate when our duly elected leaders exercise power. That's the most telling part about this to me, is the indignance that you see from Michael Hayden. Why does he want to assassinate Tommy Tuberville? Because Tommy Tuberville is asking the Pentagon to rescind its new policy to pay service members to go all around the country to kill their babies. He says that's a bad use of Pentagon funds. That's a bad policy. It's a new policy. We don't like it. So stop that. We want the U.S. military to kill our enemies, not to kill American babies. We think about the horror when we read in the news of babies being murdered. Been in the news quite a lot, I'm sorry to say, recently. Tommy Tuberville shares that horror. Says, well, the United States government is now making that its policy. The Pentagon is now making it a top priority to kill the children of American service members, or else what? Tommy Tuberville says, if you don't rescind the policy, I'm going to hold up your promotions. So you're not going to have as many generals as you want. You're not going to have as much of the top brass of the Pentagon, which is the real problem here. The real problem isn't the enlisted guy in the middle of the country. The real problem isn't the normal guy who kept his head down at West Point or the Naval Academy and became an officer or went through OCS and he's perfectly ordinary and he doesn't want to put up with all this woke nonsense. The real problem is that top brass. It's the top brass that's whining and huffing and puffing about white rage and the need to read critical race theory to be a fighting force. The top brass is the one pushing the and military policies. They're the problem. And the top brass, they're the ones that are promoting infanticide for American service members. And Tommy Tuberville says, no. If you're really, and then the Pentagon says, well, you're endangering national security. Oh, no, you're endangering national security. If you think that America faces an existential threat right now and you need the promotions, then rescind your new and insane infanticide policy. And then you get your generals. Well, no, we're not willing to do that. Oh, so okay. You would rather an attack on the American homeland. You would rather the American military not be able to fight and defend our national interest than give up your infanticide policy. Okay, tells me everything I need to know about the top brass. Good, none of you are getting your promotions. Good. And what this tells you then about the deep state and the CIA types like Michael Hayden is not that they actually pull every single one of the strings. No, Tommy Tuberville pulls some strings here. The U.S. Senate still pulls some strings. But it shows you that these unaccountable people have enough influence that they would become irate when the Senate, especially Republicans in the Senate, actually exercise their power. That's such a rarity. Republicans aren't supposed to do that. Republicans are just supposed to send out fundraising emails, supposed to send out some tweets, maybe write some strongly worded letters, but they're never supposed to wield power for conservative ends. That's crazy. They're not supposed to set policy. We're supposed to set policy in the deep state. As America lets in millions and millions of illegals across the border every single year, they decided they were finally going to exercise immigration law and enforce it by kicking out a nice conservative Christian German homeschooling family. Forget about MS-13 that's raping and pillaging and murdering and peddling drugs across the border. Those guys get to operate with impunity. They're the poor, oppressed dreamers. Ignore their face tattoos and their Satan-worshiping rituals. No. They're future, undocumented, happy, dreaming Americans. We need to just release them into the interior. But the nice German family that minds its own business and takes care of itself and is actually fleeing political persecution in Germany, where they're not allowed to homeschool and raise their kids according to their faith, and the ones who, pay their taxes and do their jobs and have kids and are just normal and reasonable and decent, they have to be deported. So that story came out a few weeks ago, even though they've been in the United States since 2008. Well, a source has just reported yesterday that the family has received a 1-year reprieve from deportation. Why? Did immigration enforcement, did the Biden administration realize the error of their ways and the injustice here? No, of course not. They just got caught. And they were getting pressure from Congress. They were getting pressure from some conservative leaders who still have a modicum of political power in the U.S., and they knew this was a bad look, and they knew it was just so transparent that the Biden administration is going to invite into the country its allies, namely terrorists and gangsters and drug dealers and rapists and murderers. They were going to invite them in and release them into the country with impunity, but they were going to deport the Biden administration's enemies, namely nice Christian homeschoolers from Germany who have a nice family. They had to go. And it was so transparent that the way that this administration operates, the way the liberal establishment broadly operates, is not according to the rule of law, of course. The border's wide open. They operate according to rewarding friends and punishing enemies. 2 tiers of justice. BLM doesn't barely get a slap on the wrist. And the Midwestern grannies on January 6th, the worst day in history, they get thrown in solitary confinement for 40 months. It just looked so bad that, okay, this one gets away. This one, they get 1 more year, and then hopefully it dies down in the news and they can deport them then. It's good news. I'll take the win. Well, we've got it. But the problem is far from over. Boy, what a great clip that was. Now, hey, ring that bell. Subscribe to the Michael Knowles channel. We'll see you next time.